But I participated in one of the last Vioxx trials. I think it was 2011. And in that study that I was talking about before, the Vigor study that was designed to show that Vioxx caused fewer GI complications, they rigged the patient population so that 55% of the people who were in that study were taking corticosteroids like prednisone for arthritis. Now, that's in a normal population, less than 3% of the people are taking corticosteroids in conjunction with anti-inflammatory medicines. But in this study, more than half were taking corticosteroids plus an anti-inflammatory drug. So I realized that Merck hadn't submitted data on the risk of serious GI complications in that study among the people who weren't taking prednisone at the same time, or a prednisone-like drug. And because we're in litigation, I could ask the lawyers to get the data from Merck on this, the raw data, in a form that a statistician could analyze. And there was a great statistician that I was working with. And we did that. We got the data. And we found that for people who were not taking steroids concurrently, Vioxx was no gentler on the stomach. It was all nonsense, except for the very small percentage of people who are taking Vioxx plus an anti-inflammatory, an over-the-counter anti-inflammatory drug. And nobody had figured that out. I mean, a whole lot of experts, including myself, had been involved in this for years, and nobody had figured it out until the very end. So we did that. And the statistician wrote it up in a hyper geeky statistical journal, and nobody knows that fact. I mean, my telling you right now is going to significantly increase the number of people who know that the study was designed for on a population that wasn't going to be like the population that the drug was going to be prescribed for.
Do you think this is still happening today? I mean, a lot of this was in the early 2000s. And have you heard about this drug that's been marketed for the last, I think, 4 or 5 years for Alzheimer's, that it changes beta amyloid in the brain, and it doesn't help at all. And I think that it's probably like Vioxx. I'd have to go look at the raw data, but it actually causes severe side effects and doesn't really help, because we know that the whole amyloid hypothesis with Alzheimer's is wrong, and that having an antibody that gets rid of amyloid beta in the brain is probably doing much more harm than it is good, but it's still approved by the FDA and it's still prescribed. Like, what is going on? It's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, that's the postscript to my book. I mean, it's in Sickening. At the very end, I added that in the last minute, because for exactly the reason that you're bringing this up, it's still going on. And it's just craziness. The FDA advisory committee voted 10-0 with one abstention not to approve this drug, that it did more harm than good. These are the independent doctors that come in to evaluate. So they vote 10-0 with one abstention not to approve it. And the FDA approves it. 3 of the doctors quit who are on the advisory committee because they're so outraged. I know one of the guys. He's a really good guy. He's really smart. So the woman who's in charge of the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research at Pfizer, at the FDA, though probably at Pfizer, she had spent 16 years as an executive in the pharmaceutical industry. I don't know if she was at Pfizer. That was a slip. But the woman who oversaw this process had spent 16 years as an executive for pharma before she came to the FDA. So her comment on this just blunder that is so huge that you can't even make up an analogy for how stupid it was for the FDA to approve this drug. She said, and the FDA advisory committee votes 10-0 not to approve it. And her solution to avoiding this problem in the future is to allow conflicts of interest with drug companies amongst the FDA advisory committee members, because then, I'm not making this up, because then there won't be so many emotional reactions. And that's how she's going to fix the problem. So
conflicts of interest are okay.
They'd be good, because there wouldn't be discord in the advisory committee, because everyone would vote to approve the drug.
It's crazy. The amount of conflicts of interest in medicine at large are striking to me. My friend Andrew Huberman sent me something recently that I posted about for the 2020 to 2025 nutritional guidelines for the United States. And there was a paper published saying that 95%, 19 of the 20 people on the committee that made the 2020 to 2025 nutritional guidelines had ties to industry, pharma, food, agriculture, things like ILSI, the International Life Sciences Institute, which is widely regarded as kind of a lobbying agency for ultra processed foods. And so like 19 out of the 20 people had industry ties. And I did a social media post about that. And then if you look at, and we can talk about statins briefly, if you look at the 2003, 2004 AHA guidelines, right, to change the levels of LDL, I think it was 8 out of 10 people had ties to the statin industry. Let's talk about that one, because that's the statin one. I did a whole podcast on statins previously, but statins are really, they really grind my gears.
Right. Well, they should, because it's a perfect example of why American medicine is spending so much money and yet not getting as good results as the other wealthy countries. And the issue is that all the data and all the guidelines are designed to sell drugs. And so virtually all of the clinical trials that are done are funded by the drug companies. They do not make their data available. They make it available to an outfit in Oxford that puts all the data together, but they have their ties to the drug companies too. And here's the thing, that the research about how to prevent cardiovascular disease is dominated by statins, and now more expensive drugs are coming along. That's what our research is about. And that's what medical students learn about. And that's what doctors learn about. But they're learning about what drugs might benefit in the reduction of the risk of cardiovascular disease. They are not learning about what they think they're learning about. They think they're learning about how they can help their patients prevent heart disease. They're not learning about that. Nobody's ever done a study that compares healthy lifestyle modification to statins. That study's not been done. Why hasn't it been done? Because the people who would fund it, the drug companies, can only lose. They've got the whole thing in their pocket. There's no reason to gamble with losing their market.